And what you'll find when you start doing research, if you start actually digging across culture and you actually look at all the information, you know, if you're in a room full of people and you get $5 stolen from you, do you only listen to one person, or do you only ask one person in the room, or do you ask all of them? Do you go across culture, is a good analogy, and do you look for the fundamental truths that are being spoken about? And what we find is that this push to keep people afraid of the Orion constellation is being done on purpose. And what goes along with it, and one easy way to really spot when someone is trying to keep you from information, is they either, one, try to make you feel silly for looking at it, or number two, they try to scare the dog out of you so that you don't go and look at it. And this can be seen all over the internet, on YouTube, Christian videos saying, stay away from the Book of Enoch, or stay away from this, or stay away from that. If there's anything I've learned during my research so far, that if anybody ever tells you to stay away from something or not to look at information, or they begin to try and link things, like, for example, why are you reading the information from Blavatsky? Isn't she linked to this, that, and the other? But see, they can't provide any detail around that. All they try to do is just link somebody to something. And what you find is when you actually start doing the research and you actually get in there and read the information, you find out that there's a reason why they don't want you to look at it. The church hates people like Blavatsky. The church hates the Freemasons. They even have a declaration on their site, that on the va.site, the Vatican.site, that says that if you are a member of the church and if you join the Freemasons, you'll get kicked out. The Freemasons, Blavatsky, Annie Besant, C.W. Leadbeater, all these people, all of these various doctrines. And when you listen to people like Manly Hall, you find out that Manly Hall isn't an evil guy at all. What he's doing is he's giving everybody information. He's not giving anybody information that he can't back up. It's all facts. It's all history. The way he approaches it is he says, well, here's what the Zoroastrians believed. Here's what the ancient Egyptians believed. Here's what these other guys believed. And all of it can be confirmed. Now, when someone does not do that, and they give their opinion only, and they insert fear, that's when you know to keep your eyes peeled. When somebody tells me not to go look at something, it is the very first thing I go and do. Because I know there's a reason that I'm being told to be afraid of something. There's a reason I'm being told not to look at something. So, what I'm getting at here is I want to play a little bit of this latest radio show with Kate of Gaia. She's mentioning Orion, and then I'm going to address some of her comments. Now, interestingly, this particular radio show is called Seeing the Allegory. And one of the things that she goes into in this radio show is that you should not be taking things literally in the Bible. She says that you should not be that you should be looking at things metaphorically. But then she turns right around during the course of this little narration, this little monologue, and she does exactly that and inserts fear into the mix. All the things that she tells you not to take seriously, she turns around and uses and inserts fear into it as well. She literalizes words, she literalizes descriptions, all from the Bible, to use as fear. Meanwhile, she tells you not to do that. So let's listen to what she has to say. And I want you to listen to the tone of her voice, too, because she's obviously very angry at the world now. What she'd say.
The only Antichrist that is in existence is in consciousness, and it's you. It's not someone outside of you. You have to make the choice. And you have to decide whether, donning a military uniform and going off and killing kids is of the Christ or the Antichrist approach.
I think that was pretty clear cut. And when you're looking to get donations to supply money to a country that I won't even get into any aspects of it, but it is so violently evil as Israel, you need to have your head examined. But first, please remove it from your ass, because no one's going to be able to examine it while it's shoved up there so deep. All right? Now, there's a few things on this planet that annoy me, and one of them is that level of absolute stupidity, moronic ignorance of a fool who hasn't got a clue about anything. And I mean that, because if you had a mind of your own, you wouldn't be spewing off a canvas that was written for you. Try to be a little original. You know, maybe clean up a little corner and start to have an original thought all by yourself. Not the one that was indoctrinated into you by your family, by your church, by your school, by your community, by your culture, by your very separatist mentality of, I'm Christian, I'm saved, everyone else can go fuck themselves. I have absolution. I can go bang my neighbor's husband or wife on Saturday night and go and ask God for forgiveness on Sunday morning, and it's all okay. And I've heard all the arguments, and they're all useless. I've talked with ministers, I've talked with very devout people, and there's a lot of questions I ask that they can't answer, and they look at me with that stupid look in their face. Well, God knows that. You know what, asshole? Shut up. I don't care what you think or can sidestep it by saying something like that. What do you know? You're the one spewing it. So is it your thought or is it somebody else's? And I'll lay dimes to donuts that it was somebody else's, and you're walking around in their illusion, worshiping their God. And I should tell you, the God that you're worshiping in the Bible, ooh, there's a neat one. I'm going to show you where all the energy's going too, and why all the churches, all the major cathedrals and everything else have all these beautiful paintings of Orion. Oh, they look like God touching fingers with somebody else, and all these angels and whatever. But I give credit where credit's due. Dan Wilten did a masterful job of pointing all of this out. He just never figured out why. So I'm going to share why, all right? So great work, Danny. Let me give you the answer. I've been asking you long enough. So here it is. Why would all these cathedrals and all these churches and all from the 1500s and on back and up and whatever, you know, back when they had, you know, what's that, Hubble? They had a Hubble in the 1500s, yeah? They could get exquisite detail of the Orion Nebula, yeah? No, I didn't think so. It's only in the last number of years we've been able to get a really good look at the Orion Nebula. And there's a couple of telescopes, but Hubble in particular. Now, this is the kind of work that Danny was bringing out, and he was showing it in absolute detail of how these paintings were the Orion Nebula. Wow, what's with all the focus of the Orion Nebula, Kate? Well, I don't know. Maybe you should ask the Vatican, seeing as one of the newest and most powerful binocular observatory telescopes in Arizona called Lucifer.
Now, do you see what she's doing here? Okay, first of all, she's trying to link the Vatican to Orion, which we'll go into here in just a minute. But she has already addressed the God in the Bible that we should be not like, basically, because it's the vengeful, jealous God and so forth. Yet the title of her video here is called Seeing the Allegory, and she is specifically telling people not to take the Bible literally. But now here she is using words like Lucifer, linking it to the Bible, or linking it to the Vatican. So now she's taking it and she's turning it into something literal, but she's using it as a means of fear. She's not doing something that's helpful, such as providing people information about what Lucifer really means, which is just a day star. It is a Latin Vulgate for day star. And when you look at all the other Bibles and you compare everything across culture, you find that out. Her logic, basically, is to trash everything. Don't look at your history. Don't pay attention to anything. Find your own new ideas, but don't pay attention to anything that's happened so far. Don't read any of the information. Don't look across culture. That's the wrong message. The right message is to look across culture. Be a detective. and look for the common truths. Not everybody is linked to the Vatican like she believes. And what we find out about Orion is it goes way back into ancient Egypt and even into the antediluvian times before the Vatican was even around. And we also find that the Vatican has done everything they possibly can in order to destroy the temples that were in ancient Egypt. Because what they wanted to do was take everybody and turn them into somebody who worships something. Somebody who takes something and puts it on a pedestal and worships it. That's not what Orion is all about. Because when we take a look at Orion, Orion is exactly what the ancient Egyptians said. It is a metaphysical representation of man in the universe. But I digress. Let's listen to the rest of what she has to say.
Really? Really, King, did it call Lucifer? Yeah. Tell you what, go look it up. I'm not going to do it for you. Like I said, I'll toss stuff out. And whatever I say, doesn't matter what I say. Go do your research. Go do your homework. Stop being so...
Now that is actually good advice. You need to do your research. You need to do your homework. And if someone tells you to stay away from information, that's the very first thing that you should go take a look at. And you should find out why. And you'd be surprised what comes up.
Bunch of lazy shit. That's how you got in trouble in the first place. All right, don't take my word for it. Go have a look. And for those that have checked my work, I got a pretty good track record. I don't spew garbage.
No, that's not true.
Why is Lucifer looking at the Orion Nebula? And by the way, the Vatican owns most of the observatories on the planet.
Why?
The Vatican, yeah. Rome. Isn't that neat? Why would they have... And isn't it funny that most of these are zeroed in on the Orion Nebula? What's the interest?
Can you see what's going on here? She's trying to say that why is all this focus coming to the Orion Nebula? I'm the only one that's covering it, folks. The only reason that we have information about it right now is not because everybody else has been providing information about it. It's because I found the information. There seems to be a push here to keep people from understanding what's going on. We're going to go and we're going to dig into why I believe the focus is to not get people to take a look at it. Now, I think she has a motive beyond that here in this little radio show. And from the past conversations that we have had, she's well aware of Hermetic philosophy and supposedly even follows it. So if she is well aware of Hermetic philosophy and the Kabbalion and she actually goes along with it, then she's obviously lying what she's talking about right here as she goes deeper into this.
What's the curiosity, the morbid curiosity of Orion Nebula? Well, okay, here's the mainline artery, because I'll tell you, the reason why they had to get everyone trapped into worshiping their god of war and death and, real loving god that's jealous and...
Now she's literalizing again. The exact thing that she's telling to people not to do, now she's actually doing it in order to push her agenda, to push her lie, or to insert fear. These are big signals to pay attention to. She's saying, why would we even want to look at the Orion Nebula? Why all the focus on it? You shouldn't be looking at it because it's evil, because they have Lucifer pointed to it, which I told you not to literalize, but I'm doing to scare you. You see what's going on here?
Wait a minute, that's not unconditional love. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Oh, there's a lot of love. Tell you,
she's literalizing.
What? I'm a little busy right now, so I'm going to send the kid down to get slaughtered. I've got me some Doritos, some Diet Coke, and I'm going to be sitting back, kicking back, watching American Idol. Yeah, that's a loving parent. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. And then we'll tell everybody it's because I love them so much that I was willing to do this.
See, this is a psychological trick. The psychological trick here is to get people to totally throw it all away, throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is the psychological trick that's going on here. And what she's doing is she's actually literalizing in order to push that agenda. When the message should be, read it but don't take it literally and go and compare across culture and see what the common truths are. That's how you find out what the truth is. But what she's doing here is she's using a psychological trick, telling people, throw it all away, don't look at any of it. Don't look at any of our past information, because remember, everything in the universe that grows and grows successfully grows using the Fibonacci sequence. And what that basically means mathematically is if you want to have a successful future, you have to know your past. If you take a look at our past, everything in our past has been thrown away. Alexandria burned down. Okay? All of this ancient knowledge that we used to have, all thrown away, all burned down as a means of control. All we have to do is take a look at history, if anyone cares to do it, and see that has put us in a position where we don't know where we are and where we're going, because we don't know what's happened previously. The Fibonacci sequence, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. It takes the last number, the last two numbers, and it adds them together in order to come up with the next number. That means if you don't know your past, you can't have a successful future. Her message here is to throw it all away.
If you love them so much, asshole, get up off the lazy boy, come on down here and take care of business yourself, you cowardly piece of shit. Sorry, that just feels right and it's logic to me. I wouldn't do it. Would you do that with your kid? Are you kidding me? You put any...
The scary thing about all this is that she knows better. She knows what all this stuff really means. But what she's doing is she's taking it and she's twisting it, and she's using it as a psychological way of getting to people. And I don't think that that's a very honest thing to do. But I digress. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Anything, this is not just my own children, but anyone. If something coming at somebody and I can be in the middle of it to stop it, that's where I'm going to be. There it is, Steve, stuck in the middle with you, huh? Clowns on the left, jokers on the right. Yeah, that's pretty much it, isn't it? So why the morbid fascination with the Orion Nebula? Well, I'll tell you, out in the Orion Nebula is this really cool thing, and it's an Anu, as I was explaining in the interview with Mel. There are two Anus. There's a feminine and a masculine. The masculine has the spiral that is in a counterclockwise configuration, and the feminine has one in a clockwise. Now, with the feminine, they both work inside and out of each other, okay? With the masculine one, what you have out in the Orion Nebula is this like little nursery for baby stars being born all the time. Now, in order for that to happen, there's a fair amount of creative, God power that's needed to do that. I wonder where they're getting that resource. I wonder if they'd be tapping those that don't know they're being tapped and being duped into walking into their collection centers called, synagogues, mosques, churches, cathedrals, with a dome top.
So I'm confused here. Is she implying that somehow there is a conspiracy to tap people's power in order to produce stars in a nebula? For what purpose? Where can you back this up? Look, if you want people to believe what you're talking about, it is helpful to be able to take what you're doing and back it up. And that means going across culture and seeing if any of that stuff makes sense across culture. What you're doing right here is you are making stuff up and you are inserting fear. And this is a clear red flag that tells people that you have some other motive going on here. You're completely making something up about them trying to tap people's power in order to produce stars in a nebula. For what purpose? It makes no sense at all. We're going to go into the details about what that nebula actually is here in just a little bit. And for those of you who do not know, you can watch Black Hole Sun, where I go all across culture. But what she's doing here should be a red flag to let you know there's a reason that people are pushing people not to look at Orion.
Anyone watch Dave LaPointe's work on the primer field on YouTube? All you gotta do is watch part 1. I'd say watch them all, but part 1 and 2 is good. And you'll understand how the universe works and how they're directing this energy. Because when you go all these silly...
How they're directing this energy. Okay, I want you to keep track, folks, because she's not backing up any of the stuff that she's talking about. And you know that I do. Red flags.
knowing God creator powerhouses piling in and worshiping an illusional God. Doesn't matter what kind of energy, they're flowing all this love and adoration and all the rest of it. Where do you think that energy's getting funneled to? Can I give you a hint? It's that energy that's getting funneled to the Orion Nebula.
Where is she coming up with this stuff? She's making it up right out of the blue and putting fear into it. Do you see what's going on here? This is a complete joke. If you're going to say something like that, you must back yourself up. Otherwise, you don't look credible at all, Kate.
And as a net result of that beautiful creation that we have, that part of us that can't create can only know things and manipulate us into doing it, is creating this nightmare around us.
Well, so all of this has completely been fabricated. So I hope everybody knows. So Kate, you are being exposed right here as a complete liar. You've not backed up any of the stuff that you've said, and I challenge you to do so. Go across culture, but then, that's right, you tell everybody not to look at stuff. You tell everybody that, basically you scare them away from it. You tell them that everything is evil, just like exactly what all the Christians have been doing to everybody for so long. Not the real Christians. Not the real Christians that understand that you can actually look across culture and read other things and understand what the real truths are. But your philosophy, basically, is to throw everything away. Throw all the past away so that none of the data is salvageable in order to find out what's going on. And then on top of that, you are creating these monster whoppers with nothing to back yourself up with. It's called lying. Now, I've heard enough of this trash. So Kate, shame on you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at a couple of things here I want to show you. And I'm going to show you exactly what the Orion Nebula is, really quickly. What the Orion Nebula is, and what was shown in these cathedrals. And this is how we can also debunk her as far as the cathedrals and stuff goes. Because the Orion Nebula, even when we go into the ancient Egyptian texts, we find that the ancient Egyptians and their temples, what they were showing was they were showing a metaphysical representation of man. And that's what Orion is. This totally goes against what the church wants. So therefore, since it does go against what the church wants, then there is no reason why the church would be pushing it. What Orion is actually showing us, even all the way up to the Orion Nebula, which looks like a brain, basically, it is showing us this metaphysical energy that goes up, as far as Kundalini goes, what have you, as we go through these various energy centers, and the very top, where the spiritual sun is, and this is what the Orion Nebula is. And if you look across culture, from Brahmanic to the Hindus to Judaism, everything except for what the Vatican is selling, okay? Kabbalah, Buddhism, everything starts at this primal point, okay? This primal point. And what that basically is, it is this point where when light started. And the way the universe works is at the very top we have something called divine thought. And divine thought creates an idea in its head as how it wants to see reality. And what it does is it creates what looks like an Anu, which she's close on. But there's no male-female sexist type of thing going on here. The positive Anu pulls ether in and sends it through the Anu. This is what's called Fohat. Fohat is the energy. It is the steed, where the divine thought is the rider. Fohat is the steed. So Fohat takes that divine idea and it creates with the force, which is what Fohat is, and Anu appear. And this is also can happen at a microcosmic level as well. And so then it takes the ether and it actually organizes it and sends it through the Anu, and it produces matter on the other side. So you have one that is male, you have one that is female. It has nothing to do with any sexist kind of thing, male versus female, anything like that. It is just an understanding that it either comes out or it goes in. Now right here it says that the pyramids, and this is from Isis Unveiled, peculiar architecture of the pyramid show in itself the drift of the metaphysical thought, metaphysical, this means an understanding of the metaphysical of their builders. The apex is lost in the primordial point. The primordial point is that black hole that sits out in the Orion Nebula that was found a year before NASA discovered it, that I found based on cathedral art. Okay? And this is what's called the invisible central sun. We have a material sun, which is our sun, and we have this invisible central sun, which exists in the Orion Nebula. That's what this is right here. And the trapezium, this yellow area right here, has a triangle with the same degrees as what you see on the Great Pyramid, which is 51 degrees. This is antediluvian art right here from Klaus Dona, which says the Son of the Creator comes, which is pre-Sanskrit, which is older than the oldest writing, and it has the Orion constellation on it. There's a tetrahedron here because it's representing the singularity that exists out there. Now when we think of this from a point of Kabbalah or the Tree of Life or energy centers, here's what's going on. So we have two suns. We have the physical sun, or the material sun, and this gives life to matter. And then we have the invisible spiritual central sun. And so they're in the universe, and we can even see this on Egypt as well, because Hermes speaks of Egypt as the temple of the world. And we can see that the ancient Egyptians knew this, because they knew, for example, based on the allegory of the way they spoke, for example, the souls of Osiris and Ra meeting and embracing in Jadu, which is Busiris, which is the very center of the Nile Delta, which is also exactly where this is located on the body, because when we take a look at the Egypt itself, we can see that the energy centers, as it goes up, it actually mimics the human nervous system. And at the very top, the reason the soul's embraced there is because this is where your soul is seated. It's seated around your pineal gland. And we see this description of the central sun. Let me just read something to you real quick from Isis Unveiled. I'll just read you this real quick. It says that the limited space of the present work would permit, we might easily show that none of the ancients, sun worshippers included, regarded our visible sun otherwise as than an emblem of their metaphysical, invisible central sun god. Moreover, they did not believe what our modern science teaches us, namely that light and heat proceed from our sun. And then it goes and it speaks of Rig Veda. It speaks of all of this, and it says they're evidently talking about the spiritual central sun, whose rays are pervading and unceasing. And what it's talking about is that reality, and when we take a look at the Tree of Life right here, and you see this eye in the triangle right here, because that symbolism is what it's referring to. It is referring to the black hole that exists out there. And so when we take a look at the Kabbalah Tree of Life, for example, we have up here we have what's called Ein Sof. At the very center we have Ein, which just means nothing, and then we have Ein Sof, and that means limitless, and then we have Ein Sof Ar, and that means boundless light. So what we have happening here is we have this thought, divine thought, and it's moving into physical reality. And it does that by creating light to begin with, which is showing out here, so that it descends down to physical reality, and the object is to move back up into the spiritual again. And so this is the understanding, and this is what this area refers to. The area in the Orion Nebula, just like the ancient Egyptians were speaking of, and they're a lot older than the Vatican, okay? They're speaking of this area, and let me look for this one particular document. It says, I've gone up by means of the staff, which is in the place where his soul is found. In Plutarch, early AD, the soul of Horus is Orion. Osiris is associated to Orion. Everybody knows to the ancient Egyptians that Orion constellation was more important than any other constellation in the sky. Graham Hancock even goes into this. But what it represents at the very, very top is Ein Sof. represents the point of the central sun where all of the reality, the Word made flesh, the Word being where it moves through the Anu, creates physical reality, which is what it's doing up there. And all the stuff you'll also notice it's right in the very center of the zodiac, because the spiritual central sun is the area that's right in the center of the zodiac, not our sun. Our sun is just an emblem of the spiritual central sun. Our sun is just a reflector. We can see that in all of the past work and everything. So the bottom line here is, in addition to this, okay, we can also see, because we can't tie this to the Vatican, because the Vatican does not go back that far. It does not go back into ancient Egypt. So if we want to take a look, for example, at the Orion constellation and Egypt itself, what we find is that this goes beyond paintings. This is not all about paintings, because what we see is that the trapezium of the Orion Nebula and the Nile Delta, we can see that these grids made by man are being emulated in the impressions of the Orion Nebula trapezium. And the reason this is significant is because we see two things. We see the ancient Egyptians saying, "Lo, he has come as Orion, lo, Osiris has come as Orion." But to the ancient Egyptians, it was not about worshiping a bunch of different gods. What they were showing with these various gods were different aspects of mind, different personalities. Horus is just another version of Osiris. It's a version of Osiris that's been resurrected. But it's the same thing. It's still Osiris. It's still a resurrection god. But it has nothing to do with a god that's separate from you. These are all systems of enlightenment where you practice certain virtues and you work on your energy centers until you get up to the very top right here, which is your spiritual sun in your head, which is the same thing as that we're seeing right here, and the same thing that we see out in the Orion Nebula, which is the brain, the very center of the brain, which happens to be the same area as the pineal gland. It is a metaphysical understanding of man. This is exactly what the Vatican does not want people to see. This is exactly the reason why the Vatican destroyed so many of these ancient temples. You can go out there and I have a whole video associated to this, where you can see all of the temples in ancient Egypt that were destroyed by the Christians and the Vatican, some by the Romans. And then we have Alexandria being burned down. There's a reason why they don't want you to know this information. And so why is it in the paintings as well? Well, it's not just in the paintings, see? It's also in geography. That can't be denied here. So what's happening here is people are tapping into something. This is what they did. This is not some big conspiracy. There's not all this focus on Orion. The only reason there's focus on Orion right now is because I'm bringing the focus to Orion, because I've discovered something. And if you take a look into any of the work from Carl Jung and the collective unconscious, then what you realize is people have the ability to pull from what we have, which are shared latent memories that exist in our unconscious minds that don't come out. These people that painted this stuff, they didn't even know they were painting it. It's obvious because you can take a look at it, and it's as if it's been pulled from a dream state, because it's almost impressionistic. Here's a photo I want to show you real quick from this particular one, and then I'll put this to rest. The whole idea about this evilness being associated to Orion, and shame on her for pushing fear and doing the exact opposite of what she's telling people not to do, which is literalize the Bible. So in order to listen to her, what you have to do is throw everything away and don't look at anything, and just listen to what she has to say when she can't back anything up. I find that hilarious, and it should be a warning signal to let you know what she's trying to do. So here we go, right here. So this is the way that the ancient Egyptians, in their temples, they were showing a system of enlightenment. It had nothing to do with worshiping separate gods. These separate gods are talking about states of mind. The eye of Osiris, for example, represents your spiritual sun in your head, which is your pineal gland. And so what we have here, we have two hearts. We have And we have this division line that exists where Doth is. Everybody's familiar with that, with the Kabbalah tree of life. That is this midpoint right here. And that's the division, which happens to be at the what the ancient Egyptians have shown us in their temples. That is, it is the beginning of the axis vertebrae is where that happens, because that's where the beginning of the brainstem is. So we have a heart down here, which represents the physical, the body, and then we have a heart up here, which is the heavenly heart that can also be found in The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is an ancient Taoism document that was deciphered by Carl Jung and I'll forget the other guy's name, in the 1930s. Richard Wilhelm, I think some of his name. But anyways, and so this eye in the triangle right here that people have been taught to be afraid of actually represents Ein Sof. It represents that point where divine thought changed and moved itself into physical reality. But what we see in the Orion constellation itself is we see this metaphysical representation of man. Here's one where you have the two hearts, the physical and the spiritual heart. And then this is the last one I wanted to show you. And you can see, if we take a look at Orion from the Earth and we look at the constellation, we can see the same thing going on, where the very top is the Orion Nebula and the very end of the side. We can see the vortex. This is simply nature. This is nature talking to us. And if you take a look at it and you understand what nature is doing, just like the ancient Egyptians used to believe that all of nature spoke in symbolic writing, and you can find this in Schwaller de Lubeck's Egypt, Science, and the Evolution of Consciousness. And what you'll notice right here is that I'm giving you references, I'm giving you information, I'm going across culture. She did none of that. All she did was make up stuff, throw fear, and do exactly the opposite of what she was telling people to do, which was not to literalize. And then she started throwing Lucifer and the jealous God and all this stuff. And then she knows better. She knows what these things mean. That was done as a psychological trick in order to get people to not pay attention, in order to spread fear, and in order to get people not to take a look at something. So shame on you, Kate. I just wanted to expose you and show everybody that how much of a liar you are. And I will be happy to debate any of this if you want to anytime. And by the way, when you say that you've asked me and you're wondering how long, this information has been out here forever. Anybody who's been watching my videos knows that I've been putting out this information forever. In fact, if you would even like to get more information on this, you can go listen to my Red Ice radio show. You know, one thing we do know, folks, is that the Vatican and the Mayans did not get along together at all. In fact, the Mayan Popol Vuh, which was the sacred Bible of the Mayans, was hidden in a Catholic church altar in Guatemala. And that Popol Vuh actually describes the Orion Nebula, which is in the center of the three hearthstones and the seat of creation. This area has nothing to do with anything evil. The Vatican's trying to hide this information. What has actually happened to them in these cathedrals is people have pulled from the collective unconscious, and it's actually kind of a sort of karma, kind of a little bit of a payback, because I don't even think they knew about it, honestly. And it also makes no sense whatsoever that if you're trying to hide something, that you would post it like that. It's not going to cause anybody to send their energy to create stars and make the planet crash. All that stuff is made up. It cannot be backed up or anything. All the stuff that I've been providing for you can be backed up across culture. And as you know, I go to many different sources in order to back this stuff up. So I just wanted to put that out there. I wanted to put this whole thing to rest as far as Orion goes, because linking something to the Vatican only goes back so far, folks. The Vatican is known to have destroyed many of these temples. They don't want you to know this information. So Kate, you need to stop lying. You need to go read up on Hermetic philosophy and the mental universe. You need to go read up on Carl Jung. And you need to go look across culture before you start making these big whoppers up for people and start pushing fear. And if you're going to create a video that has something to do about, called seeing the allegory and telling people not to take things literally in the Bible, then you need to be a little bit better about what you're doing if you're preaching things and spreading fear by doing exactly that. Y'all take care. Talk to you soon.